Can you share your journey to becoming the director of IIM Kozhikode and what inspired you to pursue a career in management education?
Management is an assimilative discipline, and its relevance is perennial. As long as there is mismanagement, there will be management in demand. And we are always, human species is constantly mismanaging. So I don't think there'll be any dearth of interest. For me, I tasted bits and pieces of everything. AI is neither artificial nor is it intelligence. First of all, it's an outsourcing of natural intelligence. It will be tamed. It will be understood. It will be used as a humongous productivity tool. And we will know how not to misuse it. And so this is the learning curve we are going through. It is going to be disruptive. There's no question about that. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to change how we work and process data and reality. And so all of these will happen, but they will happen only at the discretion of, I think, the human capabilities, which is much, much greater than what the machine is. So we are begged for technology. We are begged for knowledge. We are not going to beg for ideas because this is a country of 1.4 billion teeming with ideas. And I think the conquest of the world from India's point of view has never been through war, never been through economic might, but it has always been through knowledge.
Hi, in today's episode, we have with us Professor Debashis Chatterjee, who has taught leadership classes at Harvard University and at the Indian Institutes of Management IIMs of Calcutta, Lucknow, and Kozhikode. For nearly 3 decades, yes, you heard me right, the longest serving director of a first generation IIM, he was reappointed to head IIM Kozhikode for a third 5-year term in June 2023. Professor Chatterjee has been awarded the prestigious Fulbright Fellowship twice for pre-doctoral and postdoctoral work at Harvard University. Also a prolific author, he has published fiction and non-fiction, including Leading Consciousness, Krishna, The Seventh Sense, and Timeless Leadership, which have been translated into several national and international languages. His latest book, Leadership Chronicles, published by Penguin Books, is a tribute to his pioneering effort towards globalizing Indian thought. He has taught the art and practice of leadership to more than 1 lakh managers globally in Fortune 500 corporations and over 50,000 school leaders. So Professor Chatterjee is credited with transforming a small-town B school into an institution of global recognition that is now counted among the top 3 IIMs in India and the top 70 management schools worldwide, according to the Financial Times ranking. And I'm extremely nervous to have him. So the first question that I will ask Professor Debashis Chatterjee is, you've had a stellar career, as an academic, author, leadership coach. Can you share your journey to becoming the director of IIM Kozhikode and what inspired you to pursue a career in management education?
Well, I never started out to become a director in the first place. It's an offshoot of wanting to be a reasonably competent and caring human being. And you have no clue as to what career paths will happen to you because it's a happening. It is never a concerted doing. You may have crafted your career in a particular way, but it pans out in the way that destiny wants it. I think there is always this unseen hand that you must make allowances for, and I always did that. So it was not pursuit of a career, but pursuit of a discipline that would be assimilative in nature because I had eclectic interests. See, I dropped out of medical school to go and study chemistry honors for 3 months, and then I studied commerce for 3 months, and I chose. Eventually, I went to JNU, did a master's in English literature, and chose management because it could assimilate my diverse interests. Because management is an assimilative discipline, and its relevance is perennial. As long as there is mismanagement, there will be management in demand. And we are always, human species is constantly mismanaging. So I don't think there'll be any dearth of interest because I saw many of my professors in JNU and elsewhere. They wanted to change their horses mid-career. They were tired of their professions and they said, we wish we'd studied something else. For me, I had tasted bits and pieces of everything. And I thought, well, it's a good time to settle into a discipline that will be evolving and growing. So management is one such discipline. We're constantly changing the contours, contexts, pedagogy. So as I said, this is an assimilative discipline, and I think its relevance is perennial. That's the reason why I stuck to the field for as long as I did. That explains. And eventually, the directorship is something that's given to us these days by the President of India. Before this, the Prime Minister's office would endorse what the board would suggest. So DOPT and Prime Minister's office and now President's office. So it is not in my hands whether I become director or not. Yeah.
That's really, really humble. And I really like the line that you said that as long as there's mismanagement, there has to be management. The line will stay with me.
But
So IIM Kozhikode is not only a top management institute, but also one of the most breathtaking campuses, in the country. So what in your considered opinion sets IIMK apart from its peers? What is it that's different?
well, you've just stated that it's God's own campus. God does the work. I occasionally interfere. So that is 99% of the story. The rest of it is that this campus lends itself to reflection because it's surrounded by nature. As the crow flies, the Arabian Sea is roughly half an hour from where we are. The Wayanad Hills, the infamous Wayanad now, it's one of the most pristine and beautiful places in the world. Top 7 in the world, wonders of the well-kept secrets of the world, according to National Geographic, once upon a time. And so you can imagine that this is a space where people can get out of their content processing in the classroom to a reflective space. And so that reflection opens up possibilities, horizons, innovations. And this is what we're experiencing here. So if you had to look at the ground, you can only see about 3-4 feet. If you look at the wall, it'll be about 10 feet from here. But if you look at the sky, it's an infinite possibility. So the idea of blending natural elements with processing content in your head is a very ancient idea. It originated in the Gurukuls, where people learned in nature. And that learning was true to what a human being really is, because no other species on earth learns inside a classroom. It's all through movement, mobility, assimilation of nature's intuitive intelligence. And so this is something that sat on me for a long time. So I was inspired in Bengal by Tagore's
Shantini.
ideas of education. I said, in the management context, if I could create a Shantiniketan of sorts, I mean, without that grandeur of a Tagore's panorama of thoughts, but I still, as a lesser mortal, I could also imbibe some of that great thought. And so we have created a modern day Gurukul here. You have to come and see for yourself. Why is it what it is, right?
Absolutely, I shall. So, leadership is a very common denominator across management programs. What drove you towards teaching nuances of leadership? And how do you define and foster leadership as a quality for the students who come in and join you? Not everybody is born with leadership skills. They probably learn that with you. So, share with us some of the ideas.
Most of what passes off as leadership is nothing but dealership. You're dealing with, transactional values. You give me this, I'll give you that. You give me a vote, I'll give you subsidized life. And so all of these, you give me your loyalty, I'll give you promotion. And so this is not leadership. Leadership is the ability to look at the deep interiority of who you are as a human being. And what does a human being want, literally? And so if you look at who you are, you're a human being who's radiantly alive, unless you choose not to be so. That kid is always alive. But as we grow up, we lose that aliveness because our heads are full of schemes and diagrams and formats. And we lose the very essence that living is all about. So leaders go deep into their lives, and then they are able to mobilize their internal energy, and therefore they're able to mobilize energies of others in a specific direction. And that energetic exchange is called leadership, for lack of a better word. You can call it evolution, you can call it revolution, whatever you like to call it. That's another story. But the fundamental process is when life connects to life. There's an ignition point where the whole thing becomes a conflagration of possibilities. So it's no longer one individual's dreams and aspirations. So I had a dream called Globalizing Indian Thought, and I wanted to download it someplace. So the dream found a destination, and my consciousness found a campus where this is possible to energize a whole community of people in a certain direction. And in a modest way, we have been able to do that going forward.
That's a very, very spiritual take, on leadership. And I guess, for young kids who probably come in there to join, how difficult is it for them to look at it from the spiritual lens?
No, what you call spiritual is essentially not spiritual. It's another classified format. Spiritual is everything. Spiritual does not exclude the material. Most people have this sense that an atom is not spiritual, a monk probably is. The thing is that atom has as much of validity as the monk has, because as long as you exist as a human being, you will have a component that says that I am greater than the sum total of my understanding of who I am. And so there is something always greater that's beyond my comprehension. Once you start wondering about that, what is greater than my immediate, you become a spiritual person. Until then, you are dormant in spirituality. A stone is dormant spirituality. A plant is a vertically mobile spirituality. An animal is a walking spiritual species. A human being is an awakened spiritual species. This is the only difference. Otherwise, what is not spiritual, you tell me? And so this is something that we have to take spiritual out of this uh, ossified fortresses of religion and other denominations, so that we understand that management without man is impossible, and man without spirituality refuses to be a man. He'll become an animal. And then he'll become a plant and he'll become a stone. It is regressive. And so you have to understand, I don't think of spirituality as esoteric, otherworldly. I think kids are far more spiritual than we would give them credit for. They're far more aligned to life and nature than we are.
Oh my God, that was beautiful. That was beautiful, Professor Debashis. Now, how has leadership really evolved over the past 100 years, with businesses changing and there's new strategic, operating models and that's emerging all across the world? What are the kind of changes? Could you just share that with our listeners?
So you see, if you look at a 100 years horizon, as you suggested, you'll see leadership was muscular largely, because it was your physicality where leadership was described as. So you had big land mass, you had bigger muscles, so women had no chance in that framework. So you'll see hardly any women leaders emerging 100 years back. You count top 20 leaders and you'll see not a single woman features there. Why? Because it was largely a physical characteristics where men had a natural advantage. But that leadership, which was agrarian in nature, yielded place to what? The muscular yielded place to the mechanical. As the Industrial Revolution came forth and all these superpowers, England, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, they emerged as leaders of the mechanical universe where machines displaced the muscles. And so leadership moved from the muscular to the mechanical. You will see in Indian history a replica of that. You will see that the elephants of Lodi that made them formidable in India, emperors of India, was displaced by Babur's horses. And those horses were swifter than the elephants. And then the British brought their gunpowder. And gunpowder replaced the muscles. The machines replaced the muscles. But there was yet another frontier to be conquered. So the information revolution came up. Berlin Wall came down. Internet went up. In 1990s, it took hold of our minds and we recognized information could pull those muscles on the machines, whichever way, if you knew how to order an information properly. So Nike, Reebok became superpowers of the world by knowing where the shoe design would fit into the resources. So manpower, physical resources got attracted to the central designs. And without owning a single shoe factory, could be the emperor of the shoe world. And so fundamentally what altered was the power equation, became information driven. But when information became easily accessible with the internet, you recognize that information was no longer a leverage. So the leverage came not from information, but from cognition, which means that if you could see patterns in data, if you could see a little inflection point where you could make meaning of the data better than others, then you could create an Airbnb with a vacant room and an airbed to lend better than a hotel. And Airbnb became greater than these two design students from Rhode Island Design School, where my daughter is currently studying. So I know that they are taught design. They are not taught how to create wealth. But then they recruited somebody from Harvard. Together they created an Airbnb. Said if a person is looking for a cheaper room than a hotel and has less money to pay for than a hotel, then he would obviously gravitate towards our product. in 7 years' time, Airbnb became bigger than Hilton Group of Hotels and American Airlines. 7 years into that. So what happens is that it was not the information revolution anymore. It's the cognitive revolution of seeing patterns in information that only the human being could. A computer cannot detect those patterns. A computer cannot ask questions. They only give you answers based on questions. And so this was a fundamental change that happened in human history. So you'll see that the whole nature of power is now shifted from muscles to the machines to information sets and now to high quality cognition, which simply means that which is between your 2 ears is the basis of wealth, basis of power, and therefore the basis of leadership. This is a 100 years journey.
Yeah, the whole evolution, my goodness. So, but now everybody's talking about AI, machine learning, digital transformation. So, what's your perspective, and advice, to the workforce who will have to evolve with all these new realities that are sometimes very, very daunting?
It is daunting, all right, but don't forget that AI is neither artificial nor is it intelligence. First of all, it's an outsourcing of natural intelligence. So my boring, repetitive, dirty work, I want somebody else to do repeatedly at a lower cost. So I outsource my mechanical thinking to a device that can think faster, think on a broader scale of reference. It is not, therefore, artificial. It is not intelligence because intelligence means looking at a phenomenon in multiple ways. This is from the father of artificial intelligence, Marvin Minsky. He told me this in MIT once upon a time. And so I recognize that if your cat is chasing a rat, for instance, the rat will escape any which way because it is not going to use an algorithm to escape. It will use its instincts to know because it's endowed with intelligence, and it will use its intelligence to find a solution where none existed before. But a computer cannot do that. It is fed on an algorithm. It will not ask radical questions about its existence or what will happen to generation of computers after it is gone. It does not have an existential reality. And so that's where the difference is. So if you understand AI as a formidable productivity tool, not as a genie that's out of the bottle. I mean, most people are creating a very dismal scenario out of AI. I'm not one of those. I believe that it's just like electricity was discovered and it was tamed by us. A lot of people died because they did not understand what it was. But it was tamed and we have insulated electricity, used it to our advantage, not gotten destroyed by it. I think same thing will happen to AI. It will be tamed, it will be understood, it will be used as a humongous productivity tool, and we will know how not to misuse it. And so this is the learning curve we are going through. It is going to be disruptive. There's no question about that. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to change how we work and process data and reality. And so all of these will happen, but they will happen only at the discretion of, I think, uh, the human capabilities, which is much greater than what the machine is. And so I'm optimistic about it, although there's a fringe of uh, danger always lurking, and people are scared of social media AI. But I think it's a process of taming those forces of nature, which we have done in the past, and hopefully we'll do so in the future.
What are the biggest, challenges that a business school faces in today's time? How do you see IIM Kozhikode addressing those challenges in the coming years? What are the kind of challenges? I mean, it'll be lovely for our listeners to understand.
See, the primary challenge will come from alternative choices that students have. We are voted as great schools by students, not because we say that we are great. We are great because students choose us ahead of everything else. So even today, I will get 300,000 applications for 600 positions. One is to 1,000, one is to 800. Why are we what we are? Because we have given students a sense of fulfillment at the end of 2 years. They get they get to feel that this education has been relevant and rigorous enough for them to be challenged, right? And so, as long as that remains, management education will remain relevant to our constituency. Our students will decide whether we are relevant or not. The great thing about management education is that, as schools of excellence, a lot of us used to believe that students will always come to IIM. Now, digitally, we are going to students, and then we are saying, "Look, I'm arriving at your doorstep. Let's shake hands." And so, that humility that is necessary for us to tweak and tune into reality is always there. We are evolving. We're changing our curriculum, our courses. We're making it more relevant to a new generation of leaders, managers. As long as we continue to do that, as long as we continue to disrupt ourselves before others do it, we will be popular, we will be relevant. I don't see any dearth of interest in management education. As I said, we are a mismanaged and underlaid nation. And so as long as we mismanage ourselves, we will be there.
So, any success stories that you'd like to really share with our audience, that, you have seen from the institute, from school?
Success stories of what? Students, faculty,
Yeah.
students.
Yes.
Students. Oh, there are several. I mean, one of our students has designed the costume for Indian Olympic team, and another of them is designing a robot that will land us on the moon much more safely. So you can see the whole range. This year we recruited about 550 students for executive MBA. From accounting to aerospace, we have a whole plethora of talent coming in. So what IIM has done, and I don't want to name any specific student because essentially it's not about one student, it's about a cluster of them that's redefining how the world changes with their energy and invention. And so we have reason to believe that IIMs in general, IIM Kozhikode in particular, may have a steep entry barriers, but we have multiple exit options. So you can choose to do what you want to do. So this is a question of empowering a student to do whatever. So today I can tell you with utter pride that our student is now in the as a diplomat in the Indian Foreign Service. Our students are district magistrates in the Indian Administrative Service. Our students are in the police, IPS. Our students have gone to Microsoft, McKinsey, Bain, BCG. Our students have taken up causes of rural folk, gathering them to do things that they want to do. So our students have written novels and they've made movies. One of them to ask me this question that what is your aspiration on behalf of your students? I said, look, the day my student becomes one of my students becomes the Prime Minister of India, I will recognize that we have arrived, right? And that's not very far away. You see, there are people, current person who heads McKinsey in India happens to be my student. And so you can imagine that they have outperformed their professors, they've held their legitimate spaces, but at the same time, they haven't connected to the larger reality of India yet in the way that they would. So there's this whole underserved India that management has not been able to enter yet because we operate on terms of exclusivity. For a long time we did operate like that, but now we recognize as an inclusive world out there where people can benefit from our excellence. So we are moving towards inclusive excellence more and more rather than just an exclusive fortress of learning.
Tell us a little bit more about the inclusive, excellence that you are working towards.
You see, there are 3 Ds that come into mind. The first D was we went digital in 2001, which means that we looked at our geographical disadvantage of being in a in a town which is sometimes not connected to Delhi on an everyday basis. So my predecessors were directors. I had to travel via Dubai to reach Delhi on time. And so imagine what would that mean for us? It would mean that geographically you are debarred, although you're in most pristine landscapes in the country, in the world. Then we reinvented ourselves. We said we will start a digital-based management program where managers who cannot come to location week we'll get to them digitally. And we started this way back in 2001. And probably one of the foremost schools in Asia to do that. The other IIMs were not even thinking about it. Our disadvantage led to this. And so we digitized much before others did. Then we went into diversity. I brought in about 54% women, 53.775% to be precise, women in my cohort of 2013. That changed the entire gender diversity in the IIM system forever. Because 2013 onwards, until 2012, 8 to 10% was the average intake of women in the IIM system. Today it is 30% across the board, including that one step changed the profile completely. And then we launched 4 new programs. One was MBA in liberal studies, MBA in finance, a 1-year business leadership program, and PhD for practice track professionals like you who are working at the top of their game but don't have a PhD to access academic world. You can do a PhD through our practice track program based on your work experience. You don't have to read tons of theoretical stuff because you already have content in you. You can use that content to do a PhD. So fundamentally, we altered education to be more inclusive in terms of accommodating people who have studied English literature or worked as a chef or has become India's cricket captain and want to pick up an MBA. We will open the doors. And so that is what has happened. And the thirdly is disruption of the IIM apple cart. And I have always been criticized for doing many things we did. But we did, for instance, we changed placements. We can talk about that to care office. So we displaced placement. We said there's no placement here. We are not an employment exchange. We'll replace employment with employability. So we'll unleash you to fend for yourself. Why should I be an employment exchange? That's not my role. And so these are some of the transformative changes we brought about collectively. I often get the credit for it, but it's actually the work of a lot of people who will never be in this interview, but to them I owe a debt of gratitude.
Wonderful. I mean, speechless. It is so fascinating to hear about all of this. You've also written several books on leadership, which have got varied themes, right? So, what has been the book that you've enjoyed the most, and some anecdotes maybe from it that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, the book that I last wrote was Leadership Chronicles. In fact, I didn't write the book. The book wrote me. Literally, it was a 360-degree collection of insights about my work from my friends. And I was pleasantly surprised to see how I was always observed. And I thought I was not visible, I was not observed. But, people observed me since my school days. What I did, how I threw a flying kiss at a 60-year-old woman because I wanted to make her happy. She appeared very unhappy at home. And all of these were recorded in the memory of my friends. All of these came together. And the work I did in institution building, this was a recipe for my surprise. And so this is what I enjoyed the most. You see, when you recognize that when you write something, you are essentially telling a story of your life. Your life is not equal to the story of your life. The story is, you don't write everything. You don't put all your clothes on display. You just, and you select what you want.
Yeah.
So see, so the story of your life is not your life. So you take bits and pieces of your life, construct a story, and that story that you tell from inside out is the most memorable. And so this last book has stayed with me. But I haven't written my best book yet. I've written my book of fiction, which I loved writing, called Krishna, the Seventh Sense. It's going to remain, I think, like a cockroach in the consciousness of people who have read it for years to come, because story is based on my understanding of spirituality as a seventh sense, not as anything outward or extraordinary. It is another sense that you acquire as you get into the world of intuition and all of that. And so the last book, then, Leadership Chronicles, will still remain one that is closest to my heart, because it is my friends and family and professional colleagues who are reflecting, not always kindly. So you can see there's some, but then nevertheless, it was great to know how you're perceived. See, the two things human beings want. They want to know how they are perceived by others, how they are experienced by others. And I think this was an opportunity to get that through Leadership Chronicles. I hope you read it sometimes.
Absolutely. The fifth International Conclave on Globalizing Indian Thought marks a very significant step for IIM Kozhikode, especially as it's being hosted on a global stage. It was hosted at the University of London. So, how do you envision, what did that event really do for India, on a global academic and cultural context? Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? And do you foresee it having, India's intellectual contributions to the world a little more seen, heard, all of that?
Yeah, see, when you do a conclave in the heart of the commercial capital of the world, you obviously get visibility. So India today would not interview us for this in India, but they will do it if it is in London. Like Vivekananda had to be in Chicago to be relevant to Calcutta. And so we recognize that first we have to Indianize our thought before we globalize it. The best way to Indianize is to bring it back from a foreign shore. And so I thought that we got a lot of traction in India, huge media. And then we could measure ourselves against the best of the world, Oxford, Cambridge, London School of Economics. We had professors from all of these places who rub shoulders with our own colleagues And then they understood that we are much greater than we thought we were. So we had a Farouk engineer and an Angus Fraser sitting on two sides of mine talking about India-England rivalry in cricket. And I had a symbolic gesture where I went to Lord's and stood where Saurav Ganguly stood, baring his chest and moving his. So I couldn't do that, his shirt. So I just took off my muffler, and in a gesture that we have arrived intellectually. And this was Lord's, where cricket's Mecca. And I said, in a way, we said, well, it's not just cricket, but in the consciousness, we have arrived. In the world of ideas, we have arrived. We have begged for technology, we have begged for knowledge. We are not going to beg for ideas because this is a country of 1.4 billion teeming with ideas. And I think the conquest of the world from India's point of view has never been through war, never been through economic might, but it has always been through knowledge. I think we established that in London, and we'll move to another geography, maybe Japan and South Africa is next. We will establish our credentials there in alignment with those hubs where we think the world's powers reside.
I'm very tempted to ask you a little bit about your childhood. You know, tell me,
Childhood.
yes, tell me
But,
what are those memories that stay back? Where did you grow up? And, what makes you who you are, Debashish?
I grew up in a space where uh, we never thought that success was defined in one or two linear terms. Success was not just about uh, acquiring something. Success was about knowing how to share whatever it is that you've acquired. When I went to the United States for the first time as a Fulbright scholar, uh, I asked a question to a very erudite, enlightened audience, and I said, "Look, what does half-boiled egg mean to you?" And the answer was that an egg boiled for half the usual time. And I said, "No, in my context, in my little town in Bardhaman, West Bengal, a half-boiled egg meant a fully boiled egg cut in two halves with a string by my mother, so the two brothers could equally share it. And she had to be very careful that one half should not even appear to be slightly bigger than the other. And this was the value that came into our. So it was not as though we were looking for what more do I need to be happy. We were looking for what less can I have and still be equally happy. And so this equation has stayed with me in my growing up years. So my biggest breakthrough, my vision opened up when my father gave a bicycle to me and my brother. And when you got a bicycle, your mobility increased dramatically. So you saw more of your own town than you'd ever care to believe. So people say, globe traveler, globalizing Indian thought. But for me, a bicycle was the first real movement. So you can see even a little thing like that can change the perspective. So growing up in that town, I found it difficult to get admission to the school that was the premier school because my spellings got all wrong. I came from a vernacular school where the fee was about 1 rupee 75 paisa. Right? So when I went for admission, there was an Anglo-Indian teacher who was giving the spelling test. I could make head and tail of what he was saying. So the headmaster said to my father that he should come back next year. He will not be admitted this year. But my brother was already in that school. He used to read Tintin books, travel in a nice bus, which I envied. And so my father said, "Look, I'm going to prepare him in a month's time. Don't disappoint him." So my father went and put me up in a tuition space where the husband of the English teacher of St. Xavier's was providing tuition, and the deal was that uh, he will reveal the questions before the test, and I will sail through. But even he had a certain integrity. He said, "No, I'm not going to take a student who has got 0 out of 100. I have to test him for basic intelligence." So he said, "Tell me the spelling of circus." And others could not spell it, but I had a recall of traveling to this tuition class on a bicycle. And I saw Gemini Circus had come to town, and the word circus was painted inside the mouth of a hippopotamus. And I could recall visually the entire spelling. So I said circus is CIRCUS. And there was an uproar. And the teacher said, "Look, he comes from a 1 rupee 75 paisa school. He can spell circus, you guys can't. He'll go very far." And I was not very intelligent, but I had to thank that painter who put this word circus inside a hippopotamus's mouth so that I could spell it correctly. But he said he will go very far, and that goaded me into writing in the English language. And I can see plenty of books written in English, and I compete with the British to beat them in their own game. But it all started with that little spelling inside the mouth of the hippopotamus. So that's what luck is, and you are a product of that.
Thank God for the circus, and thank God for the hippopotamus with the Gemini circus. Finally, what is that one key message that you'd like to leave, with our listeners about leadership, management, education? What can one take away from top B school like IIMK?
If this was one sentence, 2 words, it will be stay awake. That's the only thing I can wish my students to be. Unless you're awakened to your own capabilities, the fact that you're not just competent but also a compassionate human being, and you have to bring compassion to your trade, to your craft, because that's how you grow as a leader. You connect to people through compassion, not through skills. Skills divide people. Skills make you superior or inferior, but values, such as compassion, integrate people. They connect with people. So both have to go in hand, like two wings of a bird. So my aspiration for my student is always stay awake, remain competent, remain compassionate. It will take you to the highest spaces in the world.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor, Professor Debashis Chatterjee, to be on our podcast today. And we wish you all the best. Thank you once again from the deepest recess of my heart.